Good evening, everyone, and welcome to St Vincent's Live at 5. If there's been one comment I've been getting about these videos, it's please smile. Yep, I've had the flu over the last few weeks, and so the beginnings haven't been that easy. Anyway, that's enough of that. Today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different, not just practical things backwards and forwards in the parish, but looking at our Advent journey and what we are doing on that journey, not so much from a practical point of view, but from a spiritual point of view. And I wanted to share a little bit from the Mass we had this morning. Fridays, we're streaming live with a little bit of an Advent meditation. Sundays, we'll also be streaming live so that those who can't make it out to the church can join in as well. And also those who are working and can't make the morning Mass on a Friday can sort of share with us the Advent journey. There are two images that are helping us on our Advent journey. The first one is the tree, the Jesse tree at the front of the church. Jesse was the father of David, and we know that Jesus is in that line of David. It's that kingly line, because that was how the Old Testament prophesied that the Messiah would come. And we're following day by day the tree of Jesse, and each day there's a little scene from the Old Testament, a little question, a little quiz, a little passage from the Bible, and today's story was that of Jacob's ladder. But what these stories are really all about is the fact that God again and again reaches out to his people. He wants to be with us, to accompany with us. This changed fundamentally when Christ came to earth as the Christ child, as that baby in the manger, as the King of Kings. But the Old Testament tells us and reminds us and repeats again and again and again this fall of man and this rise of God to embrace. And we hear the story of Jacob's ladder today, the angels going up and going down. So that's the first thread through our Advent journey, this God who wants to make contact with you and with me. There's a second thread, though, that we're following on our Advent journey, and that is our shelter seeking. There's this little statue I received when we had our friends from Bethlehem in, and I'm just going to put one of these pictures out of the way, so that's the wrong one. You can see me a little bit better. When the people from Jerusalem were there, this olive wood little statue, and it's a very traditional statue of Jesus, Mary and Joseph on the donkey on the way to Bethlehem. Of course, Jesus was then the child in the womb. Mary was carrying him on that journey. And that journey of shelter seeking, I think, is an interesting one in very many different ways. And through this journey of Advent, we're going to look at the people on that journey. The fourth we'll leave till a little bit later. The first one being Mary, the second being Joseph, and wait for it, the third one is going to be about a donkey. Well, that is not a bad thing at all. This story is about that attempt once again of God to find a home amongst us. He found a home in Mary, and now he wants to be born again in our homes, in our lives, in our families. If we look at Mary and how she gave shelter to God, perhaps the most outstanding characteristic that she portrays is faith. The faith of a young woman who became pregnant by the Holy Spirit in a culture that frowned on that idea. A mother without a husband. Joseph wanted to move away to sort of help her not be shamed by this story, but through an angel he heard also a message. Mary is an incredible person of faith. Even at that moment when the angel speaks to her, we hear at the end of Luke's Gospel of the Annunciation, and the angel left her. Her first instinct then was to go off to visit her cousin Elizabeth, who was also expecting a child. What faith must have lain in the heart of that great woman. We hear later on as well, when that story in Bethlehem proceeds, that they attempt to kill the child, and Joseph and Mary must flee to Egypt. Again, faith that all will be right. We can continue on throughout Jesus's and Mary's life about that strength of faith. But if we look at God seeking shelter, if we look at the response of Mary, it also makes us look at our own response. How is our faith, the faith that says that all will be well, even when things are quite difficult? How is our belief in our mission? We think that Mary's first response was to go to Elizabeth and help her in her hour of need. And how is our image of God? How do we respond to him, and how do we sing our Magnificat? We could go on endlessly about this person of Mary, her characteristic of faith on that journey to Bethlehem, and what our response would be. God seeks shelter. He seeks shelter in the heart of Mary, but he seeks shelter also in our hearts too this Christmas time. The two pictures, the tree of Jesse, following that story of the Old Testament, which reveals how God wanted always to be close to his people. Looking at the story of shelter seeking and Mary's faith, a faith that challenges us to respond in faith too. If we just think now about what is coming up over the next few weeks as we prepare for Christmas time, our Advent journey continues on. Just a couple of reminders that on Thursday the 13th we have our celebration with our young children at 6 o'clock in church. We're going to be constructing the crib, which should be a lovely evening. Adults can come along to that if they wish also. Also, a big event for us in Overhulton is our Carols on the Car Park, which will be on the 17th of December. It's a shame that you can't follow what's going on outside here. Of course, the weather here is a nightmare. If you're from far away, perhaps you don't know that, but the ground outside is a bit boggy, which is symbolic because the foundations have been laid for our loo, and also the outside lighting is going up. That is all for our Friday roundup today, thinking about those two strands of our Advent meditation as we journey together, but also looking ahead to the events, especially the children's nativity, and also our carol singing together with St Andrews, with the Methodists from St Helens Road, and all the community here in Overhulton. So I wish you all a lovely evening together, and let's ask God to open our hearts to give him shelter, that we can find shelter in him. So have a lovely evening, everyone.